Hi, and welcome to the extended Q&A for 60-minute seminars, Friends with Baggage. If you haven't seen our first part of Friends with Baggage that was recorded, you can check out the YouTube link that's above the screen and watch that so you have some perspective about what we're speaking about, the questions, the quotes, and all the things about chicken sandwiches. With me again is Kailey Newkirk, teaching minister at Summit Church, and Summit partner, Sam Orocho. And we are just going to jump right back in and answer the questions that we were not able to answer in the original part. So friends, how do we handle when two of our friends stop speaking?
Kailey, do you want to jump in on this one?
Sure. Yeah. I don't think there's any kind of formula for this because it kind of depends on the friends and the conflict, but I would say just, again, treat people like competent adults, like we talked about in the seminar. And part of that means I trust that you are enough of an adult, enough of a mature adult to handle your own conflict without me needing to hold your hand or to kind of do it for you. Now, where that gets a little dicey is maybe one friend kind of insists on talking about the other friend with you in your conversations. And I would just put a stop to that pretty quickly and firmly. Just say, hey, I'm just going to pump the brakes there. I don't want to be in the middle of you guys. And I prefer that you, if you want to talk about that specifically, maybe talk to someone other than me. And if your friend won't accept that, I would say you need to maybe reconsider that friendship, because it's totally reasonable request to not be the receptacle of gossip about someone who you are also friends with. I think the other thing I would say about that is that if you feel the urge to kind of insert yourself into that conflict, I would say just maybe check that, because you don't want to fall into the trap of, this is satisfying to me because I'm an important confidant. And so I'm going to be the go-between because I thrive on that drama, or I thrive on being an important person for one or both of these people. And if we feel we're doing that, maybe step back from it. And also, if we feel like we need to resolve the conflict, a lot of times that can be a manifestation of our own feelings of discomfort. So if I want to solve a problem for you, sometimes it's because I want to resolve my discomfort, not because I want to, resolve your discomfort. And I would say maybe just pump the brakes on that a little bit. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but that's what I got.
Yeah, Kailey, I would just add that refuse the urge to pick sides.
Yes.
I feel like when I've had two friends that are in conflict, it can feel like they are both lobbying for me to pick a side. So
Yes,
in some way they can, say, see, there's two of us that, whatever it might be. So refuse the urge to take sides, and then use it as an opportunity to actually lead those two individuals to whether it be greater maturity or greater relationship with the Lord. One of the things that anytime I've had someone come to me, not anytime, but I try to, when someone comes to me to say something about a conflict they're having with another friend of ours, is I encourage them to believe the best about the other person's intentions. Mm-hmm. I encourage them to, as best as they can, not let anything unwholesome come out of their mouth about that individual to somebody else. If there's anything that they want to say about that person, the best person to say it to would be that other person.
Absolutely.
And so those are the two things that I would say is, one, refuse the urge to kind of pick sides. And then two would be that anytime any of that comes your way, use it as an opportunity to help your friends grow in maturity and in the relationship with the Lord.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about too is just that kind of triangulation where if I'm in the middle of this, then I'm going to become either the savior to this person or vilify another person. And It's just so not helpful.
Not at all.
What do you guys think about when, let's say I have the two friends that aren't speaking and I want to host a dinner, if it wasn't COVID times? I would invite both of them, because then it's up to them versus me picking sides. What do you guys suggest in that situation?
Oh man, I have nothing for that. I'm conflict avoidant in that way. I would just not throw a party. Like, I'm putting a kibosh on all parties until you guys work this out.
I think that you exercise wisdom, right? Like I think there are different levels or stages of the conflict that they might be having. And so like maybe it's identifying, okay, would it be a good idea for each of them to be in the same room together? And then don't be afraid to let them know that, like, hey, I know you're having this conflict. I'm throwing this party. I don't know if it'd be a good thing for you guys to see each other.
Right.
So I think that just exercising wisdom on whether the conflict is at a point where it would not be good for them to be in a room together.
Okay, great advice.
Word.
Next question is, what is the key to finding couple friends? So I think this is coming from a couple wanting to find other couple friends.
I don't know I don't think I have a key to that. Again, I would say follow Sam's advice and just ask. You can always ask and expect people to tell you the truth. Maybe they don't have time or energy for a new relationship, and that's okay. And I don't have to be embarrassed or feel frustrated or resentful about that, because that's not about me. It's honestly not about me. They're not turning down me as an individual. They don't even know me that well yet. I don't have enough energy to juggle an additional relationship. I barely have time to maintain the relationships I currently have. So just, ask, and then whatever the response is, like, accept that, knowing that it's not really necessarily about you. I think all of our couple friends that are like our closest couple friends have married in for the most part. Like, they were Rob's friends before we got married, or they were my friends before we got married. And then we kind of brought them into the marriage as well. Our very closest couple friends actually happened after we got married, because she and I were kind of acquaintances at first, and then the men discovered that they liked to play euchre, and so then there was euchre parties, and then there was family dinners and all that stuff, and then we traveled to Malawi together, and we went on vacation together, and all of that is just very bonding experience in terms of getting to know people. For me, that always has to happen organically, or I suppose the best way it can happen for me is organically. But yeah, we've invited people to vacation with us, and it's been like a real crapshoot because we may not have known them well enough to decide whether or not it's okay to spend that much time with them, and be okay. And it's just worked out. So I would say, just ask, and put yourself in some situations where there's an opportunity to develop some of those more intimate conversations organically.
So I don't know if this is going to make sense or not, but it ties into that, is the sense that as it relates to couple friends, don't force it, but be intentional. I feel like sometimes we try to force, whether it's, my wife is good friends with a lady, and she wants me to hang out with the husband of her friend. And it's almost like, I don't know, like I feel forced to do it. But at the same time, like part of, I think, some of the discovery of like, wow, I really like that guy, happens when we're intentional, at least in giving it a shot to say, hey, let's spend some time with them, and, see if there's common interests, if there's some things that we can, that we enjoy doing. And I think you'll be surprised that way. So don't force it, but be intentional.
Something that you said, Sam, during the seminar about just how, sorry, my phone's ringing. And no. Something you said about developing male friendships being kind of around activities. I feel that that's very true of couples as well. Like, if you can center it around doing something, there's not as much of an awkward, like, what are we going to talk about? Type of thing.
Yeah. Like euchre parties, right?
Like a euchre party. Exactly.
Great experiences. Another thing I think too is, I know we talked about it not being forced, but Summit has connect groups that are based around couples, and that's a great way, just numbers wise, to kind of have some experiences. It's a little forced, but it's a way to jump into things. I know a lot of other churches have something similar.
I see that as intentional, though.
Yes,
like, I feel
exactly.
Like that. I don't feel like that's forced. I feel like when, I wouldn't say this, but like when your wife is like, babe, you should call him and see if they want to hang out. Like that.
That's not from personal experience at all, is it?
No. that's forced. But saying, hey, we're going to intentionally join a connect group and we can commit for 8 weeks. And if we love it and we develop relationships, awesome. If we don't, let's try another one.
Yeah. The nice thing too is they're all on Zoom. So if you really don't like anyone else in the group, you can just be like, oh, my internet connection is, it's going, it's something wrong with it.
Oh, goodness. All right. The next question we have is, how do we not struggle alone during the time of COVID, especially when you're single or living alone and it's hard to have that much needed face-to-face time with your friends? And this person specifically said, not Zoom. So,
yeah.
So I will say that I feel your pain, brother or sister, whoever wrote the question, because like for an extrovert like myself, the season has been so hard, especially like from March to June when it was like really hardcore quarantine and a lot of folks were not going out, restaurants weren't open, that sort of thing. It was really, really hard. And even for my wife, who's not as much of an extrovert as I am, it was really tough. So I will say that it is possible. So have hope. But one of the things we did was we have our good friends, the Mortons, and anytime we're like craving for just people to hang out with, like the Porters, the Mortons, like we give them a call. And what they did was they came to our house in their car. They stayed in the car. We were on our lawn with lawn chairs. And we spent, I think, 3 hours just talking. Their kids were crawling on top of the car. All that to say that I do think that you can be safe and get that face-to-face interaction. So if you've got any friends, and I understand the concern, just say, hey, would you be up for, me driving by and us talking or hanging out that way? Because I'm really needing some face-to-face FaceTime. So I think you could find some creative ways to accomplish it.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. We started an online Summit Connect group when the pandemic hit, and I would say first and foremost, if you're not in an online Summit Connect group, start there. And I know you don't want Zoom, but the only way to get to not Zoom is by starting with some people. And so we just, for the first time, met in person last night in the Summit parking lot. We all backed our trunks up into like a wide circle and we pulled out our lawn chairs. Eddie's in that group as well. And so he and Giselle are like on their lawn chairs. He had his broken foot propped up on a little like stool. It was really cute. And it's probably so insulting. So he's not gonna be my friend anymore.
That's how he wants it described, as cute.
Yeah, just so cute. His little footstool. But yeah, like that was so life-giving. And we were so far apart that some people couldn't even have conversations because they would be yelling across the parking lot. But you could have conversations with the people to the right and to the left, and then we would, throw a mask on, go over across the way, talk to someone else. And we brought our own food, so it felt like, we're having dinner together, and it was just really wonderful. So yeah, I think there are ways to get there, but it's not going to happen overnight. And the other thing I would say about that is that I feel like that's addressing the logistics of the question, but I also want to address kind of the emotional aspect of the question, the spiritual emotional aspect of it, which is, again, and I know we touched on this in the seminar, we've got to be drawing from a deep well of faith first and foremost, because we ought not try to demand comfort from our friendships that we're unwilling to seek through God first. And I feel like during this time, there's kind of a temptation to just grasp at whatever comfort we can get and to ignore entirely the other places that we can get it, because we feel just like, this is me personally. Sometimes I just feel like a little school brat, and I'm just like, no, I want to have this now, and I want to eat my ice cream, and I want to have my friends. And the reality is that the universe has not singled us out for specific misery. This isn't, if you're super lonely during the pandemic, it's not because somehow you've been singled out to be especially punished, or this is everybody. Everybody is in it in some way or another. We're all doing the best that we can. And that means sometimes if we're lonely, we have an opportunity there to seek God in those moments. And if it means sometimes we're overwhelmed, we have an opportunity to seek God in those moments. Instead of demanding a resolution, it's an opportunity to trust. There was a thing that happened Ember she's doing launch ed distance learning, first grade, which is a
Favorite.
thing. Totally, it's so great. I love it. So we're doing distance learning, and she is taking a assessment, like a reading assessment, and the questions get progressively harder because it's trying to determine where her reading level is so that it can give her the right books to read and stuff like this. The trouble is that the teacher thought that there was like a skip button or an end test now button for when you get to the point where you are clearly exceeding the level that the child can comprehend. But there wasn't. And so we just had to keep going. And Ember is in tears because she is just like, I can't understand any of these words, but she won't quit because that's unacceptable to her. So she just keeps trying to read these same sentences over and over again that she can't understand, and just crying, and I'm just gonna guess, mommy, and it's so sad. And I thought, man, sometimes the only option is to just keep going until the test is over. There's no skip button, and there's no end test now button. Gosh, I wish there were, but like, there's something to be said about keeping in perspective that this is not forever. This is a season of time, and we have to make them the best that we can of it. Just like she had to make the best of that test. And it doesn't mean it's not miserable, and it doesn't mean that it's in any way acceptable, but it is our only choice, because the alternative is to just kind of crumble into ourselves and succumb to despair, which I do think the Bible says we ought not do. There's a difference between sadness and despair, and despair happens when I believe that there's no hope for the future. And here there absolutely is. Like, we have thousands of years of anecdotal history of God's people showing that there is always hope. And that's filled with ups and downs that are far more profound than the ones that we've experienced in our own lifetime.
All right. We're going to move to the next one. How do you make the decision about dealing with a friend with baggage compared to a friend that is pulling you down into a toxic relationship? How do you define the difference between the two? And when should you take the necessary action? It's a big question.
Kailey, you talked a little bit about this in your portion. I think kicking us off, and I've got a couple of notes, but I think that
I have very little on this one because I feel like I kind of covered it quite a bit in the seminar. There's got to be a balance. A healthy friendship has a balance of give and take in the long term. That doesn't mean they don't need extra help sometimes. All of us need extra help sometimes, and of course that's fine to offer. But if they always need extra help, and you're always giving it, you got to consider whether or not you're trying to carry their backpack. So it's that load versus burden thing where if we're trying to help each other lift up a boulder, that's okay, but you've got to carry your own backpack. And if I'm carrying your backpack for you, that's not healthy for either of us, because it takes away an opportunity for you to be responsible for the things God has asked you to do, and it makes me secretly resentful over time.
What I had on here was when you look at God's people and the relationships throughout the scriptures, what you see is a beautiful interdependence, but each of us with a complete dependence on God, right? Like that together we have a beautiful interdependence that we need each other, that we depend on each, but that our complete dependence is on the Lord. And I think that when we identify in our friends that their dependence is not on the Lord, that their complete dependence is on us, that's kind of where you need to start possibly having conversations about saying, hey, you need to trust the Lord with this. You need to, this happens with our kids as well. It's helping them see and know when they need to depend on the Lord with something, and when parents can help them with something, So I would just kind of keep those two things in mind: a beautiful interdependence with one another. So we're there for each other. We help each other out. We encourage one another. We spur each other on. But a complete dependence on the Lord is what I'd add.
Right.
Agreed.
Okay. We're going to go into the next one, and it's in reference to a quote that Kailey read. So I'm going to read that and then read the question that this person has asked. This is a quote from the book An Adult Child's Guide to What's Normal. We have so many shortages from childhood. We have so much fear of abandonment and rejection, and we therefore have so much need for control and outright fusion in our relationships that we find the rewards of simple friendship beyond our grasp. Many of us have such high and unrealistic expectations of our friendships that it's impossible to meet them. Also, many of us expect each and every friend we have to be intensely intimate. We expect each friend to know everything about us, to put us first at all times, to feel what we feel and believe what we believe. In other words, we expect our friends to be for us what our parents should have been for us when we were in early infancy. This simply isn't possible. And this person is asking, what do you suggest to parents regarding their kids and helping them know how to have healthy relationships?
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot about this because, you know, my only child is now 6, and I don't know if I'm totally screwing her up or doing really well. Who knows? Could go either way. But I would say, in reference to what the author was talking, what Linda was talking about specifically, is without stability, without a sense of at least familial permanence, our kids are at risk of trying to find that elsewhere. And so, you know, there's no such thing as perfect parenting. Like, we're all going to mess our kids up in our own unique way, but it doesn't have to be like, there are things that we have control over. And I think, you know, making sure that your kids know that you love them no matter what, even when they make mistakes, making sure your kids know that it's always safe to talk to you about both their struggles and their needs. Making sure to meet the basic needs that kids have in terms of like an emotionally stable home life. I mean, that's going to prevent a whole lot of kind of grasping for these things elsewhere that particularly, you know, adult children of alcoholics tend to grasp for, because of the level of chaos that existed in my childhood. I'm always trying to grasp at that permanence in that control in my adult life, and that leads to some really unhealthy control behaviors like codependency. And I think you can avoid so much of that. Now, you can't. The reality is, even if you're an absolute perfect parent, your kid is still going to get messed up, because we live in a fallen world, and even perfect parents have imperfect children. Not that there's anything such thing as a perfect parent, because the enemy is always after us, you know, to steal, kill, and destroy. And if he can't do that through the parents, he'll find another avenue. So, you know, it's impossible to avoid it entirely, but you can do what you can have influence over by providing a stable, emotionally stable, safe space for your kids.
If you're a perfect parent, you'll probably damage your kids by giving them a perfect standard that they will never live up to. But that's beside the point. The things I had is, one, and I actually preached on this at Waterford at one point, like probably 5 years ago, 6 years ago. But there are 3 things that I tell my kids every day before they go to bed. Is I tell them, Mom and Dad love you no matter what. God loves you no matter what. And God has a plan for your life. Those are the 3 things that, if at one, it's the 3 things I think the enemy attacks the most, that people will stop loving us if we do things that are bad, if we do things that they don't agree with, or that God will stop loving you if you do something bad, and that in some way, like that if I mess up, God's plan is done with me, like he's done. So I tell them that one. So I feel like that hopefully helps counter some of the enemies, the lies the enemy throws at us. But then I would like model healthy relationships for them, right? Like, identify if you're codependent in a friendship, and change, and then do some of the things that with them, help them do some of the things that we discussed, like widening the net of their friendships, right? Sometimes they just want to hang out with 1 or 2 kids, but help them, you know, find other friends. So those would be the 2 things that I would suggest.
You feel like you're targeting a friend. Kailey talked about targeting friends. If you feel like you're doing that, what advice do you suggest to break out of feeling like you need that person in your life?
So, go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, I'll be quick. The only thing, anytime I feel like I'm leaning into something more than I should, I fast it. And so maybe it's time to fast that friendship and not pursue a friendship with them. and kind of detox in some ways from your need to target that person.
Yeah, I would just add to that. I love that, by the way. It's such a good idea. I would just add to that just keeping in perspective that feelings are real, but they are not truth. And so if I feel like I need someone, I have to remember that's actually logically not true. We don't need anybody specific besides God. Now, of course, we were made for community and we won't thrive without it. But actually, Scripture doesn't say that you're only going to thrive in community with these certain people who are very much like you and who you enjoy being with. In fact, Scripture has a lot more to say about finding unity amidst great diversity, both of personality and socioeconomic background and all of those things. And so if we feel like we can only thrive with certain types of personalities around us, I would say that's just logically not true. And I would recommend what Sam is talking about to really kind of try to get away from that. Because it may feel true, but it's not in fact true. We need God, we need Christian community, but what that community looks like can be very, very different than what we want or hope for it to look like. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. When we fast it, we realize, maybe I didn't need it as much as I thought. I'm still alive, right?
Yeah.
So pulling away often gives us the perspective of what is true.
Great. All right, the next one is advice on deciphering mixed signals between a male and female, or between male and female friendships.
You want me to?
So, full disclosure, I'm not single. I've been married coming up on 17 years. So the like from a guy perspective, if you're feeling like you're getting mixed signals, and I know this sounds kind of old-fashioned from a guy that's been married 17 years, but have a conversation and ask. Say, hey, I'm getting mixed signals. Like, do you like me? Do you not? Like, just ask. I don't know.
Yeah, I agreed. I think also, let me just say this. I'm sorry. If you feel like you have to decipher mixed signals from a guy, this is from a woman's perspective, he's not interested. Like, if he is, he will say something. You're not going to find out, 5 years later through a series of unopened letters that, he was secretly in love with you and couldn't find the words to tell you. If you're interested, tell him, but don't be his emotional girlfriend without an increase in the level of commitment. So, like if you think of like thermometers, there's a level of commitment, there's a physical intimacy, there's emotional intimacy, there's spiritual intimacy, and those things should all rise in tandem. So if you have high emotional intimacy, but your level of commitment is way down here, that's going to be heartbreaking in the long run. So I'm sorry. That's probably
great answer. Right. This seminar is on friendships, so maybe this is outside of the scope, but how do you effectively find a constructive level of vulnerability in the workplace, particularly in corporate America, where emotional expression is viewed as weakness?
You go, Sam.
I think that, so in corporate America, I think more and more companies and leaders are realizing just how much things outside of the work environment impact things that are happening inside your performance. And so really when I think about it, and we all have a level of influence in our workplaces, whether, regardless of your role or position, but if you're in a position in which you do have more influence or leadership over others, kind of maybe model it. If you've got a review with an employee, find out what's happening in his life, not like intrusively, but just ask him how he's doing. Maybe even some things that, did I drop off there? Yeah. So use it as an opportunity to really get to know your staff, your employees, and create an environment where it's not like we're sharing everything, but that we're vulnerable enough with each other.
Yeah, and I would add from the perspective of the employee. So what Sam's talking about here is kind of setting the tone as the supervisor, which is so important if you have the opportunity to do that. But if you're the supervised, then I would say, one, keep in mind you don't owe it to any of your coworkers to disclose personal information, so you don't have to do that. And if you do, I would just caution to make sure that it's not to leverage that information as an excuse for bad behavior or underperformance. So then if you are choosing to disclose, it's truly a choice. It's not something that you feel like you must do or that you have to do to get something. And then you just, I think, follow the tone set by your supervisor. And you might desire more vulnerability than that in the workplace, but I would recommend kind of following the tone of your supervisor to prevent you from jeopardizing your job unintentionally, especially in this kind of uncertain economy. So you always have friends outside of work that you can confide in, or you should.
Great. So with the last question, I think it's a great one for how a lot of us are probably feeling during COVID and not being able to have enough time for everyone. So what do we do with the guilt from not being able to invest in certain friendships the way they desire?
Yeah, I think, again, just recognizing that I'm not responsible for the well-being of another human being. That's an easy thing to feel, but it's not actually true. And when we take that onto ourselves, when we really start to feel like, well, if I don't care for this person in these specific ways, like they're not going to make it, like that's bordering on believing that we're God, that I have the power and am responsible to make sure people are okay. And I don't think that's true enough. And again, this is coming from the perspective of codependent. So when I think about the guilt of that, it's like, oh man, I don't have enough time to give to my friends during the pandemic. And instead of thinking, gosh, I bet they understand, I bet they're adults who understand that everyone is doing the best they can, I think, I hope they don't hate me. How can I make sure they don't hate me? How can I make sure they're okay? And that's not, again, that's not necessarily a healthy perspective to have. So I would say, if that's how you're feeling, there might be a little codependency creeping in there, and read Boundaries, read Codependent No More. And then also just say it. Like, if you feel the absence of a friendship during the pandemic, just say, like, reach out to them and say, hey, I really wish we could spend more time together. I'm so sorry that I don't have the energy for it right now while I'm juggling launch ed and work and all that stuff. But I just want you to know that I'm thinking of you. That would go a long way with me.
And I think that like in the healthy relationships that you do have, if you said that, Kailey, that would be like acceptable. Like it would be, they would understand. And so I kind of said, what I had as something for this was that friends will understand when you're in a season where you can't invest as much as you would like to. Maybe let them know, and then do the things that you can do, right? Like you can pray for them every night. You can, you can do those things to love that person well, even when you're not able to do all that you would want to do for that person. And so in some ways, give yourself grace to know that if they're depending on the Lord, they're going to be just fine.
Absolutely.
And so don't put that weight on your shoulders, because you weren't meant to bear that.
Preach.
Well, thank you guys for joining us for our extended Q&A of Friends with Baggage. Thanks again to Sam and Kailey for the extended answers to all these questions. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sheri.
No problem.
For facilitating
guys.
once again.
Best moderator ever.
Yeah. Yes, I want a t-shirt with that. So don't forget to join us for seminar number 3 with Chris Burns, Addictions Redefined. Thanks for joining us.